mother-in-law hospitalized my child last summer, but my husband's still on her side. My husband's mother has always been one of those people who thinks she knows best about everything. I raised 3 strong boys when the economy was toughest in the 80s. They didn't need babysitters, she'd say. At first I admired her. I wanted to be just as resilient of a parent as her. But when I gave birth to my son, she constantly criticized the way I parented. From how I held him to the toys I gave to him, nothing seemed to be okay with her. I tried talking to my husband about it, but he just shrugged, saying, "Take it easy. She's always been like that. She just wants the best for us." So for years, I let her little comments just go in one ear and out the other. But recently, she'd gotten a whole lot worse. She started ignoring all the rules I gave when it came to babysitting. I'd say no sugar after 6, and she'd load him up with candy. I'd say bedtime is 8, and she'd keep him up till 10. The worst part was she'd tell my son, "You don't have to listen to mommy's silly rules when grandma is around." And it got so bad that my son started talking back to me saying, "But grandma lets me." Even at family gatherings, my mother-in-law would make fun of me in front of everyone for using a car seat booster for my son. Back then, we didn't need all those expensive baby products. I just threw my kids in the trunk and they turned out fine. When I tried to explain current safety standards, she rolled her eyes and said I was brainwashed by social media. My husband just sat there agreeing to everything that came out of her mouth, and it frustrated me. "I'm not going to another family gathering if your mom is always gonna act like this," I told him later in the car. He sighed and said, "I told you, you can't be so sensitive around her." And honestly, everything she said was true. Maybe you should try trusting her judgment. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stayed silent the rest of the ride home while my husband continued to call me childish for the way I was reacting. But the thing that really set me off most was when she started mocking my son's severe peanut allergy. She'd say things like, "Back then, kids didn't have all these health and mental problems like they do today. It's ridiculous. Parents just make these things up for attention." It was so crazy I thought she was kidding, but I was wrong. 2 Sundays ago, during a family dinner, my mother-in-law started going on and on about how my parenting was too soft and how I was raising my son to be weak. Then she pulled out a little candy bar with peanuts and almost handed it over to my son before I slapped it out of her hand. I stood up and glared at her. "That's it. You're never going to see your grandson until you figure out how to actually be nice and respect my family's boundaries," I said sternly, taking my son to his room to make sure he's fine. My husband went up after a couple of minutes with an angry expression. "You shouldn't have done that to her. Now she's downstairs crying when all she wanted to do was help." "Help? You're kidding, right? She tried harming our child. Your son," I shouted back. He shook his head at me and walked back out to continue having dinner with his family. After that, I stopped inviting his family over, declined every time she offered to babysit. My husband was still angry at me, saying I was being unfair and holding a grudge over nothing, but I didn't care. My son's health was my priority. But last week, I had to leave town when my mom suddenly collapsed. My husband promised he'd stay home with our son. So before I left, I showed him exactly where to find the EpiPen and reminded him about all our rules. "Absolutely no peanuts, okay? I got it. Go and focus on your mom," he said just before I had to rush out. But apparently, after an hour of watching our kid, my husband needed to urgently step out to visit some friends and watch an important game. He dropped off our child to his mom, handed over the EpiPen, and told her all the rules that she called useless just weeks ago, expecting her to follow it. She rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, fine." And he thought that was the end of it, but he was wrong. After he left, she decided to prove once and for all that I'd been lying about the allergy. She gave my son peanut butter cookies, thinking she could finally show everyone I was being overdramatic. But then she watched his face swell up, then panicked as he started turning purple and blue right in front of her. She called my husband crying for help while she struggled with the EpiPen. He quickly called 911 and raced back to see the damage. My husband called me an hour later at the hospital. Our son, he had an attack. I drove like a maniac to get there, just in time to hear his mother confess that she'd given him peanut butter to see if the allergy was real, but she wasn't even sorry. If you hadn't coddled him so much, maybe his immune system would be stronger. Even the staff couldn't believe it. That's when I decided that my mother-in-law needed to be unalived. Full story on channel linked below.